Welcome to another edition of From the Ramparts, our video blog. Today I want to share with you my latest piece entitled Things That Make You Say, What? There is a saying attributed to the Chinese, quote, may you live in interesting times, unquote. That is quite appropriate to our current time. We are living in interesting times, my friends. I recently saw an article that appeared in an obscure Atlanta community newspaper called the Atlanta Jewish Times, where the owner and publisher, a man named Andrew B. Adler, actually called for the assassination of President Obama. You can read it for yourself at https://www.documentcloud.org/documents/28497-AJT.html. Apparently, Mr. Adler, in his zeal and his zest for Israel, feels Mr. Obama is not committed enough to Israel's survival, quote unquote, for his taste. So in order to move things along, he suggests one of the three options, and I'm quoting them from the article here. Quote, to all you Netanyahus out there, here are your Kobayashi Maru options. Kobayashi Maru, quote unquote, is the term used in the Star Trek, The Wrath of Khan, to describe a no-win scenario or facing a solution that involves redefining the problem. 1. Order a preemptive strike against both Hezbollah and Hamas, knowing that military and civilian casualties will be high, but not as high as they would be in 2017. 2. Go against Secretary of Defense Leon Panetta wishes that Israel take a lethal bullet in the name of preserving a healthy worldwide economic climate and order the destruction of Iran's nuclear facilities at all costs. 3. Give the go-ahead for the U.S.-based Mossad agents to take out a president deemed unfriendly to Israel in order for the current vice president to take his place and forcibly dictate that the United States includes helping the Jewish state obliterate its enemies, unquote. Atlanta Jewish Times. What? You read that correctly. The publisher of an Atlanta Jewish community newspaper actually speculated in public and in print about the option, quote unquote, by the Israeli Mossad to assassinate the President of the United States. He wrote it. It's in print. You can read it at the link I supplied earlier. But guess what? As of this writing, Mr. Adler has not been arrested or detained. Can you imagine the furor and fuss if the owner of an Islamic paper suggested something this outlandish? The other thing is, there has been a ho-hum reaction, as if this was no big deal. Was it a prank? Was it a joke? Not from what I've seen. In fact, another journalist called Adler, and he admitted writing the piece. But he said he wasn't really calling for Obama's assassination. What? That's right. Despite what you read in his newspaper, Adler told John Clark of Gawker.com that he merely wanted to get a rise out of his 3,500 readers. What? Go to http://Gawker, GAWKER.com/5877892/newspaper-editor-israel-should-consider-assassinating-Obama. So let me get this straight. Anyone who criticizes Israel publicly usually gets hit with an avalanche of charges of anti-Semitism. Just ask Helen Thomas. But this guy writes that Israel should send in the Mossad to take out a U.S. president and nothing happens, not even a visit from the U.S. Secret Service. What? On another note, my wife and I took her brother and his girlfriend to see the movie Red Tails last Friday. Immediately after the credits finished rolling, my brother-in-law pulled me aside to ask my opinion of the film. I told him I wasn't that thrilled about it and shared some of my reasons. Now, before I share them with you, understand this. My opinion of the film has nothing to do with the real history of the famed Tuskegee Airmen. I know Dr. Eugene Richardson. He was an airman, and I had the pleasure of having several of the Philadelphia chapter Tuskegee Airmen on my radio show when I was on WHAT AM back in the 1990s. I am familiar with their story. These men were and are genuine heroes in every sense of the word. However, in my opinion, George Lucas did not do them or their story justice. I know this film is not a documentary. I know Hollywood always takes, quote, creative license, unquote. But this movie takes historical facts about the exploits of the 332nd Tuskegee Airmen fighter pilots, juxtaposes them into computer-generated image fight scenes to deliver a tool for revisionist history and propaganda for war. Were these men heroes? Absolutely. No question, no doubt. However, there was no backstory on the men or their struggle against the U.S. Army's resistance to the experimental program to train African-American pilots for the U.S. Army Air Corps. Nothing was said about Tuskegee University or its pilot training program and facilities the U.S. Army used in the experiment, not even via flashback. Lucasfilm made it seem like there was only one bigoted general opposed to the program, when in fact it was the whole U.S. government and military. These men had to alter the perceptions and decisions of the U.S. military and the government itself, with the help of Eleanor Roosevelt. But they persisted and prevailed. Remember, during this same period, all a black man in the United States Navy could be was a cook or a servant to whites on the ships. That's how deeply ingrained U.S. racism and apartheid was. In fact, the bomber pilot trainees of the 477th Medium Bombardment Group, who were themselves commissioned officers, were arrested, detained, and threatened with court-martial for daring to try to integrate an officers' club on a base right here in the United States. Once the charges were finally dropped on all but three, the bomber pilots and their crews never left the U.S. or flew a mission. What? What really got me was not one pilot in Lucas' movie expressed concern or love for a black woman back home, nor were there any scenes with black pinups or pictures of loved ones in the background. The only storyline was about one dark-skinned pilot who went nuts over an Italian girl he saw while flying over her house. This pilot, like several of his companions, was undisciplined and a hotshot. The movie made it seem they were all like that in one degree or another, as opposed to disciplined, dedicated, and skilled officers intent on doing their duty. In real life, the Tuskegee Airmen were young, college-educated men, whose commanding officers were older than they were. But in this movie, everybody was young, I guess to play to a youth audience. The Cuba Gooding Jr. character was young, stiff, and inconsequential, so it had no credibility. Sadly, the movie focused more on computer-generated images and visual effects, which were very good, than the story of brave, determined African Americans fighting for a double victory, what they call the Double V campaign, against fascism in Europe and deeply entrenched racial apartheid in America. Black newspapers in the U.S. were behind the Double V program and used that slogan as a rallying cry. In the movie, the dialogue made it seem like the pilots were only concerned about personal glory in the newspapers. I could go on, but you get my drift. Don't depend on Hollywood to tell our story like it should be told. See the movie and judge for yourself. This is Junious Ricardo Stanton from the Ramparts.